Hi everyone, this is Vicki, the director from Panzer CDC. Today I'll be reading Grandma Lena's Big Old Turnip. I hope you guys enjoy this book as much as I do. Thanks. The whole thing started when Grandma Lena decided to grow turnips in her backyard garden. With her reading glasses perched up on her nose, all winter she studied her seed catalogs, hoping to find just the right kind of plant. Grandma chuckled at all the fancy names. There were white knights and scarlet queens, royal crown, and white ladies. She finally decided on a turnip called Purple Top. After all, purple was her favorite color. When spring arrived and the ground was soft enough for digging, Grandma Lena planted the tiny seeds. She didn't worry that the air was still nipply. She knew the turnips liked cool weather, and soon the tiny plants popped up. For the next month, Grandma Lena watered and weeded her turnip plants every day. "Hey, Lena," Uncle Isidore teased. "I hope you taught those turnips how to swim. You're watering them so much, I'm afraid they're going to drown." Grandma Lena grunted, and she said what she always believed. Anything worth doing is worth doing right. And every day the turnips grew, and one was bigger than the rest. On the first day of June, Grandma Lena stepped into her garden to find the biggest, fattest, most gigantic turnip she's ever laid her eyes on. "What a fine turnip stew this will make," she thought, "even enough to feed half the town." From the porch, Baby Pearl stared at the turnip with wide eyes. "Big potato," she said with a giggle. Grandma Lena took hold of the enormous stem and leaves. She yanked and she jerked and she tugged, but that big old turnip wouldn't budge. "Carl," Grandma called, "put down that newspaper and help me pull up this big old turnip." Grandpa took off his reading glasses and came running. Then Grandpa pulled on Grandma, while Grandma pulled on the turnip. They yanked and they jerked and they tugged, but that big old turnip wouldn't budge. "Izzy," Grandma yelled, "stop eating my peach jam and help us pull up this big old turnip." Uncle Isidore wiped his mouth and came running. Uncle Isidore pulled on Grandpa, Grandpa pulled on Grandma, and they yanked and they jerked and they tugged, but that big old turnip wouldn't budge. "Nettie," Grandma yelled, "put that baby down and help us pull up this big old turnip." Aunt Nettie gave Baby Pearl a toy and came running. Aunt Nettie pulled on Uncle Isidore pulled on Grandpa, and Grandpa pulled on Grandma. They yanked and jerked and tugged, but that big old turnip would not budge. "Rascal," Grandma hollered, "put that bone down and help us pull up this big old turnip." Rascal dropped his chewing bone and came running. Then Rascal pulled on Aunt Nettie. Aunt Nettie pulled on Uncle Isidore pulled on Grandpa, and Grandpa pulled on Grandma. They yanked and jerked and tugged, but that big old turnip would not budge. Baby Pearl came toddling across the yard, her diaper half undone. "Shame on us," said Grandma. "We forgot about Pearl." Baby Pearl pointed at the ground. "Big potato," she said. "Stand back, Pearl," warned Grandma. "I'm going to haul this turnip out if it's the last thing I do. Okay, everyone, pull!" In all the confusion, nobody noticed that Baby Pearl was holding onto Rascal's tail. Then Rascal clamped onto Aunt Nettie's skirt, and Aunt Nettie grabbed Uncle Isidore, and Uncle Isidore grabbed Grandpa, and Grandpa held tight onto Grandma. The whole family yanked and jerked and tugged with all their strength. Pop! At last, with dirt flying in all directions, that big old turnip bursted out of the ground, and the whole family fell in a pile behind it. Baby Pearl clapped and said, "Uh-oh, fall down." But now the sun was setting and everyone else went to bed, exhausted. But Grandma Lena stayed up late. She washed and chopped the turnip greens and put them in her biggest pots, with some onions and bacon, and cooked them until they were nice and tender. After that, she chopped up the giant turnip. It was so big there would be plenty left over for turnip casseroles, turnip fries, and pickled turnips. Then she made a turnip stew with potatoes, carrots, and peas. What would a turnip stew be without cornbread? Thought Lena. She baked golden brown corn muffins. The next day, Grandma Lena invited all of her friends and neighbors to help her fill in the hole and share her delicious turnip dishes. Half of the town showed up with shovels, hoes, and spades. Some brought jugs of cool apple cider and lemony tea cakes to share. It was the biggest party since last year's 4th of July's picnic. Everyone agreed that it was the best meal they've had in a long time, and the neighbors joked about the grandma would plant next year. "It'll be a big one," said a neighbor. "Lena doesn't do anything halfway." "Of course," said the Grandma Lena. "Anything worth doing is worth doing right." That night, when the family was full and dozing off in their chairs, Baby Pearl whispered to Rascal, "Big potato, all gone." Hey, I hope you had fun reading the story with me. I thought it was hilarious how the whole family had to yank and pull to get that big old turnip out. I think it's a very fun book to read with your kids and get into gardening and making your own food. And I hope you guys really enjoyed this. Thanks.